What's good, YouTube? Hope everyone's having a great week. So this episode is going to be a bit strange in that I'm reviewing a discontinued camera, which is this Fujifilm X-PRO2. And I picked this up about 4 years ago when it first came out, and I've been using it ever since. But it's the camera which allowed me to transition from photography being a hobby to photography being a line of work. And these days I'm using it for my professional work still. And it's easily one of my favorite cameras. And I've talked about it quite a lot already on this channel. So those of you who've been following and are already subscribed will know that I love the X-PRO2. So in this episode, I'm just going to be talking about whether the camera is still worth buying, because while it is discontinued by Fujifilm, you can still buy used models and display models. And also, is it still relevant in 2020 and 2021? So let's talk about the costs of these cameras. And the Fujifilm X-PRO2 costs around £700, and that's an X display model. And you can also pick up used models for cheaper from places like eBay, and they come in at around £450 to £500. Meanwhile, the X-PRO3 is about £1,500 new. You can pick up the X-T3 for about £900, and you can also get the Fujifilm X-H1 for about £900 as well. So I use the X-PRO2 for street photography mainly, and pretty much for the last 4 years, it's been my go-to camera. So all the POV videos you see on YouTube, they're all taken with the X-PRO2. Also, when I go abroad to Japan or to New York or to Istanbul, I always bring the X-PRO2 with me. And finally, I also use this camera for my professional work. Now, I also have an X-T3, and sometimes I rent in the X-T4 if I need stabilized footage for something. But I always bring the X-PRO2 with me, either as the main camera to take photos or as a backup camera. Now, one of the good things about the X-PRO2 is the sensor inside it is very similar to the X-T3 and the X-T4, especially when it comes to photography. For video, it's a bit different, and I'll get into more detail on that in a bit. But photography-wise, there is very little difference between taking a photo on the X-PRO2 sensor and the newer X-T4 sensor. And it's to the point where on Lightroom, I can never tell the difference between the photos I've taken with an X-PRO2 or an X-T3 or an X-T4. So the main thing I like about this camera is how it looks. And I know that's a quite strange thing to say about a camera and when it comes to buying a camera, but in my opinion, buying a camera is a bit like buying a car, in that the technical aspects and the technical specifications, they are important, but it also matters how that car looks and how it feels to drive. Because I always feel that if the camera feels good and I enjoy using it, I'm gonna take better photos with it. As for reliability, as I said earlier, I've been around the world with this camera. I've been to Japan numerous times. I've been to Turkey numerous times. I've been in London pretty much every day of the year taking photos on the crazy weather, on the snow, fog, mist. It's been drenched by rain multiple times, and I've never really had an issue other than that one time when I made the lens switch while it was pouring down with rain, which I do not recommend you do. Finally, and obviously this is an important factor when it comes to buying a camera, but the image quality is up there with the X-PRO3, the X-T3, the X-T4, and I've got to be honest, and as I said earlier on in this episode, I really can't tell the difference between photos taken on this camera and photos taken on the X-T4. So with the X-PRO2, I also take lots of photos at night, and as you can see from these examples on screen now, the sensor takes really good photos at night. And also when it comes to the dials at the front and the little buttons, in my opinion, they're pretty much all in the correct places. They're all easy to hit. And most importantly, you have the exposure compensation dial at the top, which I always use, especially if it's a sunny day, in order to slightly underexpose my images, because that makes it a lot easier to edit in Lightroom afterwards. So the good thing about the X-PRO2 is you can make it as easy to use as you want. So I can stick everything in automatic, and it pretty much behaves as a fully automatic camera. And then if I just want to go into aperture priority mode, I just move the aperture dial on the lens, and that's it. I don't have to go through the menu systems. I don't have to mess around with any dials at the back. It's as simple as that. It's clean, it's easy. That's one of the best things about these cameras, in my opinion. If you're into recording video, then the X-PRO2 isn't the camera for you. Either the X-T3 or especially the newer X-T4 or even the X-H1 would be much better options. So there's two things I don't really like about the X-Pro2. Firstly, the viewfinder. It's not the best. There is an optical viewfinder option, but I usually use the electronic viewfinder. And when you compare it to the X-T3's and the X-T4's viewfinder, it's not even on the same level. And next up, you have the dials at the top. So this ISO dial, I mean, it just gets a bit stiff, it gets sticky, water gets in there. So when it's raining or cold outside, the little screen at the top, that sometimes gets misty and you can't really see what settings you're on. So obviously, most of you are probably asking, why haven't I upgraded to the newer X-PRO3, which is technically a better camera and it looks great, it feels great. When I picked it up in the Fujifilm store, I loved how it felt in my hand. But the main thing and the main reason I didn't get it is that screen at the back. And I don't know what Fujifilm were thinking when they decided to take away the LCD screen, or they flipped it around so you can only use it if you flip it out. But to me, it makes absolutely no sense. Like, I don't know any other company where they make an upgrade to a product and they take away one of the main features in doing so. So I have to pay full price for a new body, but I'm not getting the features I already get with my X-Pro2. And I know Fujifilm said that they want to encourage people to look through the viewfinder, but I'd rather they left that up to the consumer, I left it up to the photographer, because I take loads of photos using the rear LED. Especially when you're in a crowded place, sometimes you can hold the LED up like this and people think you're recording a video, but you're going around taking photos. And it's just a good way to take street photography shots up close of people without making them uncomfortable or anything like that. So I don't know what Fujifilm were thinking. I know there's a lot of you guys, probably Fujifilm X-Pro3 owners, who love the idea, but to me, it just seems a bit crazy what they done. And that weird LED screen they pull at the back where it tells you your settings, it's absolutely pointless. There's no reason why they couldn't just have a normal LED at the back, and if you didn't want to use it, you can just turn it off. So that's the reason I haven't upgraded. That said, it looks nice, it feels nice, I'm sure it's a great camera, but I'm gonna wait till that X-Pro4 comes out, where hopefully they bring the screen back. So to answer the question of this episode, is the X-Pro2 relevant still in 2020? Is it still useful in the year ahead in 2021? And the answer overwhelmingly is yes. And that's because the image quality is still on par with those newer X series bodies. And in my opinion, it's still a great looking camera and it still works great. So I've been using it for 4 years and I don't see myself changing it for the foreseeable future. So yeah, if you have an X-Pro2, tell me your thoughts on this camera down below. Or if you have an X-Pro3, tell me why I should make that upgrade. But I hope you guys all have a great week. If you can, get out there and take some photos, and I'll catch you in the next one.